Part 3, we will cover safety issues, public and classroom conduct, our dress policy, classroom procedures such as arrival and dismissal, bathroom policy and cleaning and sanitation, playground safety, sick policy, injury to a child, incident report, intruder safety, emergency procedures, discipline policy, and working with a child who has challenging behavior. Our key verse, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. 1 Timothy 4:12. This verse is what we as volunteers should adhere to as we go about our daily living. Children and Xtreme kids look up to the volunteers. Children trust what we say. They trust what we do. They think what we do is what they need to be doing. So it is so important that our conduct, both at church and outside of church, is above reproach in everything that we do. Not only do the children look up to you, but parents trust you with the spiritual well-being of their child. You are in place of leadership, which means you are held to a higher standard. And we as believers are called to be like Christ. So what areas should you consider? Think about your social media. What are you portraying on Snapchat, on Instagram, on other social media that you use? You should do the same thing on social media that you do with the children on Sunday morning or Wednesday evenings. You should always exemplify Christ. So whether you're posting a meme or posting a night out, make sure it is reflective of the Lord's desire for you. Your physical appearance. Know that the children notice. They notice what you wear. They notice how you act. They notice how you dress. So be cognizant of your physical appearance. Be cognizant of your behavior out in public. Be aware that children are like the weaker brother. In 1 Corinthians 8, it says, while something might be okay to do, you need to not do it if it will cause someone else to stumble. So think about your behavior in public at restaurants, on social media, and in other areas, and if it might cause a child and or their parents to stumble. Now, volunteers in the classroom should always be engaging with children, from the moment they show up at the door to the moment that they leave. You should never just be sitting there. You should never be looking at your phone. We only get 45 minutes to an hour and a half with these children every single week. So let's use that time, every moment, to show them the Lord in our speech and our actions and the things that we do. Sit with them, talk with them, ask them how they're doing, make connections. Now, our dress policy for volunteers is as follows. It's important that the way we dress glorify the Lord. Rather than telling you all the things you shouldn't do, I'm just going to lay out things that you should do. A good rule of thumb is business casual, or what you would do if you came to church because you're at church. So think about your jeans. Are your jeans revealing or are they respectful? Think about the pants that you wear. Yoga pants, stretchy pants, those are not appropriate for working with children, as children can see things that they don't need to see. In addition, we want to think about males and females that are around and whether or not you might cause them to stumble by what you wear. So a good rule of thumb is jeans or fingertip length shorts, and a t-shirt, or something like business casual. If you wear a t-shirt, make sure it's not revealing. Make sure if there's anything on there that it's glorifying to God. Being mindful of who you're ministering to and what you're trying to show. All right, our last section is on classroom procedures. Arrival and dismissal, bathroom policy, cleaning and sanitation, playground safety, sick policy, incident report, intruder safety, emergency procedures, discipline policy, and working with a child with challenging behavior. Now, as a volunteer, when you arrive, you need to go and check in. When you check in, you will receive a walkie-talkie and you will receive a name tag. The walkie-talkie will need to be assigned out. You'll get a different one each week, but you will write your name down next to the number of walkie-talkie that you got. You will also receive a name tag, and on that name tag will be your name when you check in. It's important to do that. We will put in this training at a later date. Let me rewind. We will insert how to use the LEAD app. Once you are in class, as the children arrive, make sure they have a name tag. On their name tag, it will have their name and any allergies and the class that they're supposed to be attending. If you're able to, check and make sure that is correct. The parent will use the matching name tag to pick up the child. Once you have been in class and once all the children have arrived, the person who is working the check-in desk will deliver the room roster. You or your helper can look over the room roster and make sure every individual that is in the room is on the room roster. This includes youth and adult helpers and buddies. If their names are not on the roster, handwrite the names below. And be sure to keep the room roster with you wherever you go. This will serve as emergency information should you need to contact a parent or know an allergy when you are at the playground or should you need to evacuate. Bathroom policy. Now, we do have a child abuse policy training that you will complete that is called Ministry Safe, but I wanted to highlight just a couple of things. The bathroom policy. Make sure you never take a child to the bathroom by yourself. The rule of 2 is important. There always needs to be 2 adults or 2 children. If a child needs to go to the restroom and you have to leave another adult in the classroom, take that child to the handicap classroom and stand outside. This will give you accountability with other adults that are in the area, usually at the children's ministry check-in, and it will allow the student to go to the bathroom on their own. If you have more than one child with you and you need to use the larger bathroom, stand at the door with the door open and allow the children to go to the restrooms. Cleaning and sanitation. Every room there's a bucket, and in the bucket there's a pump with water in it, a pump with soap in it, and a pump with disinfectant. After all the children leave, be sure to clean those surfaces that are frequently touched with the sanitation. Wipe down the tables, spray the toys, and the doorknob. If the solution is getting low in any of the spray bottles, please alert myself and we will refill the bottles. We will try to do this on a weekly basis. Playground safety. Children love the playground. If there are enough volunteers in a class, station volunteers around the playground. Have one standing at the front gate, one standing back by the gaga ball pit, and one standing next to the playhouse. This will allow the volunteers to watch the children as they play. Make sure the playhouse, the doors do not stay closed, and no child is by themselves or alone in the playhouse. If a child needs to use the restroom while you're on the playground, alert the other volunteer and take that child to the handicapped bathroom just inside the back door. In the room roster binder, there is a first aid kit should a child get hurt while on the playground. When you're done playing on the playground, please take the balls and put them back in the ball container. Our sick policy is as any other sick policy is. If a child is running a fever, vomits, has diarrhea, a rash, head lice, has eye discharge, or has been in the hospital, they need to stay home. There is a first aid kit in every single children's classroom. It is in the cabinet where the supplies are. Remember, do not administer any medications to children. If there is an injury that cannot be taken care of with the first aid kit, then contact the director or a medical personnel who happens to be at church. We have several who can help in this situation, including Lauren Lyons, Barbara Kent, Greg McKeever, and John Williamson. If you need additional medical help, you can call 911. Be sure to complete an injury report should a child become injured and talk with the parents to let them know what occurred and follow up the next day to check on the child. In addition, there are choking devices in the kitchen, in the coffee room, in the main building, in the power hour room, room 111, in the nursery, and in the kitchen in the fellowship hall. These choking devices will help if a child is choking. You take it, you place it over the mouth, you suction it out, and it will help with a child who is choking. Here is an image of the incident report. You can fill this out and give it to Beth, or you can fill out one online. Should you need to evacuate, our meeting area is in the football field behind Alpha Omega Academy. If there is a fire, you will be alerted via your walkie-talkie. All walkie-talkies should be on channel 1. This will allow us to alert everyone. You can also alert everyone by pressing the group button. Go to the nearest exit as a class and walk out to the football field. Should there be a tornado, go to the inner hallways or to the bathroom. Do not stay in the gym or the sanctuary in case of a tornado. If there is an intruder, use common sense to decide what is best to do. There are typically 3 options. The first option is run. If it is clear and safe to do so, take the children and run or walk swiftly out to the football field behind Alpha. Be sure to call 911. If it is not safe to leave, then stay in your classroom, shut the door, and barricade it with anything you can find. Have the children sit quietly in a corner all together. Keep your phone available and the walkie-talkie, and we will do our best to communicate instructions. If need be, you can fight the intruder. Find sharp objects around, and if the intruder tries to come in, use that to fight. But this should only be a last case scenario. We are blessed to have security on Wednesday evenings through different men at the church and on Sunday morning with our security team. They have access to a walkie-talkie, and should there be an intruder, they will alert people via the walkie-talkies on channel 1. The last area I would like to talk about is our discipline policy. I've made our discipline policy very simple. We want to connect with children for Christ. Our goal is to build a trusting relationship with the child to exemplify the Lord's relationship with us. So let's think about the Lord's relationship with us. He loves us unconditionally and points out our sin in order to correct our behavior to become more like Him. He gives us the great commandment, which is love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. So that's our rule. Love God and love others. And when we can do that, we can have a lot of fun. Now, if a child is having a discipline issue, the first thing to do is do your best to redirect and handle that discipline issue within the classroom. If that child is unruly or needs additional help, come find me and I will come and help with the situation. If the behavior continues to spiral out of control, then we will call the parent. Now, when a challenging behavior occurs in the classroom, the best thing to do is to look at the need behind the behavior. Why is that child misbehaving? It could be that they're wanting their way. Usually that's what it is. But why are they acting the way that they're acting? Look at 4 different factors. Number 1 is physiological factors. Well, that involves our body. Ask or see if you can figure out, is that child hungry? Did they eat dinner before they came, or are they hungry? Maybe that child is thirsty. Maybe that child is tired because they've had a long day at school or they haven't gotten sleep. Maybe that child has things going on at home that are bothering them. Do what you can to assess the physiological factors and see if you can meet those. If the child is thirsty, get him a drink. If he is hungry, get him a snack. There are additional snacks in our office if you cannot find any in the children's wing. The second area is environmental factors. Is there something in the environment that's making him have difficulties? Is it too loud? Some children have sensory issues. When things get too loud, they have a hard time. Is he having a hard time sitting crisscross? Is he uncomfortable? Is there another child that's doing something that's bothering him? Maybe his clothes hurt. Look in the environment and see if there's something that is contributing to that behavior. Look at the spiritual factors going on in that child's life. If he is not a believer, then he will have a hard time recognizing sin or bad behavior in his own life. Work with him to begin to understand what is right and what is wrong. Finally, look at that child's history. Does that child come from a family or from an environment that challenging things are happening? Maybe parents are going through a divorce. Maybe he had a challenging time when he was an infant, and so now he has a hard time regulating his behavior. Is there anything in his history that might be contributing to his behavior? Is this behavior repeated behavior, or is this behavior out of the normal? Look for the need behind the behavior and meet that need. Now, I want to talk a little bit about children that come from hard places. Now, a child who comes from a hard place is a child who has lacked the initial attachment cycle. Now, what that is the way that God created human beings to attach when they're infants. God created man and woman to be married, to have a healthy pregnancy, to give birth, to feed and change and love that infant, and disciple that infant into a child so that child can grow up to become a young man or woman, his or herself. But we know that that doesn't always happen. And many times that initial attachment cycle is interrupted. Now, an attachment cycle is this: when a baby is born, he cries when he has a need. He's hungry, he cries. He's wet, he cries. He's tired, he cries. And what a loving mother or father does is they meet that need. A child cries, that mother picks him up. That child is hungry, that mother feeds him. That child is sad, that child is tired, that mother rocks him. So that need is met by the caregiver. And then trust develops. This happens over and over and over and over again in the life of an infant, thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So that infant's brain is growing and trust is developing. They know that their needs are getting met. Now, for a child who comes from a hard place, who does not have their needs met when they're very young, we usually see behavior deregulation at about ages 2 or 3. Between the ages of 4 and 6, we see ADHD symptoms. Then we see depression and anxiety. And then they begin to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder or emotional deregulation. Now, an infant, as it's developing in the womb, the very first part of that infant is the central nervous system. And that starts with your amygdala, which is in the back of your brain right here. And as you see in this picture of the developing infant, you kind of start with the central nervous system and it develops into the infant. So if something goes on during that pregnancy, it can inhibit the development. It can take the child off track. Now, this could be due to a stressful pregnancy, and it doesn't have to be negative stress. It can be positive stress that can inhibit the development of an infant. It can also be due to smoking and drugs and alcohol. Well, when a foundation of a child is cracked, as that child grows up, he's going to be unable to handle the challenges that come his way. When we look at the human brain development, we see that the majority of the brain development happens in utero and during the first year of life, which means if there's been any disruption during the first year of life or in utero, there are consequences later down the line. That is why it is so important for a parent to bond and attach with their infant. If that hasn't happened, then a child gets off of the developmental trajectory. Here is an image of a normal 3-year-old child's brain and a child who has been neglected. You see the physical difference in the size of the brain. So if a child has gotten the love and care and attention that it needs from birth, that child is going to go from the brain of an infant to a brain who's able to make choices, which is in the frontal lobe. If a child has been neglected or has been abused, that child has not had the ability to develop the brain capacity to make decisions. It's still going to be operating in the amygdala. Children who come from abuse or neglect or some kind of trauma in their background can be behaviorally about half of the age of their quote unquote normal peers. Now here's an MRI picture of the difference between a child who has been abused and a child who has developed normally. Now, when a child develops normally, when a child is loved by their parents, goes through the attachment cycle, there's things in your brain called synapses that connect. And these connect and help with problem solving as that child gets older. As you see in a child who is abused and also neglected, those synapses never form. Now, many times we think of a child who's been neglected as a child who maybe had a parent who was on alcohol or drugs, and that could be the case. But it could also be a parent maybe who was on their phone and didn't attend to the needs of their infant, or a parent who left their child in the carrier and didn't attend to the needs of that infant. Neglect tells a child that his cry does not matter, and so that child feels worthless. So, how do we help these children? We do it in the same way that God connects with us. And that's why I love this approach, because it is the way God connects with us, empowers us to succeed, and corrects our sinful behavior that we need to do to these children. The first thing we need to do is we need to connect to them. Think about the way a mother connects with her infant child through touch, through sight, through holding, through looking into that child's face. That is how we connect with children. We get down on their level. We look softly into their eyes. We think about them as an infant as we develop that trust. Then, how do you empower an infant? You give them the tools they need to succeed. You feed them, you change them, you love them. If they get hurt, you comfort them. You give them a Band-Aid when they scrape their knee. You hold their hand until they can walk on their own. You take them to safe places where they can play. The same thing with a child. You empower that child. Give them the tools they need to succeed. Then as that child grows, you correct the behavior. You redirect, you teach them the right things to do. And you do that in a loving way. That's what God does with us, and that's what we need to do with these children. Now, in order to best correct behavior, we use something called the ideal approach. We respond to a challenging or a disobedient behavior immediately, directly, efficiently, with an action-based solution and leveled at the behavior and not the child. Now, what that means is when a child misbehaves, we immediately correct it, but we correct it in a loving and playful way. If a child mouths off, we might say, try that again with respect. If a child doesn't stand in line, we say, oops, get back in line. We do it playfully. Children respond better playfully. But we do it immediately. A child cannot remember 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 minutes down the line that they did something wrong. So we need to be right there with them. That is why we need to not be on our phones, but we need to be on the floor or at the table with the children. So if we see a misbehavior, we're right there. And that is why buddies are so important for our children that have a harder time, so they can immediately help with the behavior. Put it out when it's a spark. It's a lot easier than putting out a wildfire. Now, direct, D. What that means is we need to lower ourselves into the sight of the child, not lord it over them, but lower ourselves down. We need to take on the posture of that child, and we need to speak directly to them, firmly, but directly. So, children, many times who struggle, are looking for control. And if we lord over them, then they're going to rebel. So we have to give them a little control. And what that is that's by giving them choices. So we might say, all right, you don't want to sit right here. You can sit here or you can sit here. So the choices are things that we are okay with, but the child has to choose. You give him a little control. If he's not happy with either one of those choices, he can come up with a compromise, but that compromise has to be something that you're okay with. So you give him a little control, and what that does is that builds trust. Now, efficient. Efficient means you deal with the behavior as it is. You deal with a small behavior in a small way and a big behavior in a larger way. If it's a small behavior, you might correct it playfully. Let's try that again with respect. If it's a larger behavior, you might say, all right, let's sit down over here. Let's calm down. And when you're ready, we can come back and be with the group. You still keep your voice calm because remember, you are the regulator. But the child needs to calm themselves down so they can make a decision. Action base. Children learn by doing. If a child is in a hypervigilant state, which means their amygdala is on fire, talking to them is not going to help. They need to do action for them to learn. So I try to have all children who misbehave redo the behavior that they did wrong, have them do it the right way. Try that again with respect. Let's pick that up again. Let's go back and walk instead of run. That way they learn the right way to do it and not are just in trouble for the wrong way. And the last thing is leveled at the behavior, not the child. That child is valued and is precious. God said that in His Word, and we need to show that to these children, that they have value. Their behavior is wrong, and what they did was sinful, but they are loved and they are forgiven. There's nothing better than having someone love you in spite of you messing up. This image right here shows what many people do with kids with challenging behavior. They spend the majority of their time correcting and the smallest amount of time connecting. Children will not want to be corrected unless they are connected with the adult in charge. So spend time connecting with these children so when you do need to correct them, they trust you and they know that they are loved. All right, I want to finish this training by going over volunteer availability. We ask that on Sunday mornings you volunteer on a regular basis. Once a month for children's church, at a month interval every 4 months for Power Hour, and every week for Sunday school. If you are unable to serve, then you are welcome to find a sub for yourself, one that's already been vetted by Xtreme Kids. If you are unable to find a sub for yourself or you need help, you are always welcome to ask me. We will put in here a training on how to use CCB scheduling so you can check when you are scheduled to serve. Reminder, everything we do, we are an example to Christ. We need to watch our speech, our conduct. We need to be seeking the Lord in everything. Remember, these children look up to you, and it is a privilege to serve them. And while I want every single one of you to serve in children's ministry, it is important that we hold our volunteers to a standard of excellence, that we strive to be like Christ. So if you have any questions or you don't think that you are able to do that outside of volunteering, step away, because the last thing we want is a child to see us not acting like Christ in our manner. Now, if we do mess up, we apologize. We say we're sorry because we've all sinned. We've all fallen short. We've all lost our temper. We've all done things we shouldn't do. That's not what I'm talking about. The Lord wants us to be an example. He wants us to be an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. Thank you.